morning, everyone, and welcome. We have a very important press briefing to discuss what's going on right now with regards to the opiate epidemic in Erie County. I'm Erie County Executive Mark Polenkars. I'm joined by our District Attorney, John Flynn, our Erie County Sheriff, John Garcia, as well as our Health Commissioner, Dr. Gail Burstein, and we are also joined by Leanna Ream-Snyder from Deaf Access Services, who's providing the American Sign Language to everyone today. We are also joined in the back by our Undersheriff, William Cooley, as well as we have Cheryl Moore, the head of our harm reduction unit from the Department of Health, which is dedicated to trying to reduce the impact of opiate epidemic and other types of addiction issues in our community. We are going to talk primarily, at least I as well as Dr. B, about the overdose deaths, what we've seen in the last 13 months, 14 months, because we also have some initial data from 2023, which is very disconcerting. But we also need to talk about the impact that this is having on our community, as well as the impact and what can be done to help interdict the drugs that are entering into our area, and that's why we have our sheriff and our district attorney here. I just want to note that the opiate crisis never went away. It has morphed. It has changed. It is not the same opiate crisis when I declared it a public health crisis back in 2015. It is different. It is no longer the situation where you often saw in the past where Johnny, who played on the hockey team, injured himself, suffered a serious injury, broken leg, was prescribed opiate painkillers such as hydrocodone, OxyContin to get through that period, and then became addicted to the legally prescribed drugs. We've done a very good job of eliminating that problem in our community. And I want to thank everybody who's been involved, not only from Erie County, but our partners outside of Erie County who've worked exceptionally hard over the last few years to reduce the amount of individuals who are becoming addicted to opiate painkillers and other types of opiate-based drugs. What we're seeing now is a complete morphing of this issue. During the pandemic, I talked about how we were starting to see individuals who were using cocaine overdosing and dying as a result of cocaine being spiked with fentanyl, and that has really grown. As statistics will show, unfortunately, more than 50% of the deaths that occurred in 2022 in Erie County were generally a mixture of cocaine and fentanyl, and that is not something we saw in 2014, 15, 16. It was pure heroin or a heroin mixture with fentanyl, or was often the case just somebody dying of an overdose of prescription drugs. So it has changed, it has morphed, and it's making it much more difficult to actually address it, because what we're dealing with is a set of individuals who may themselves not believe they have a problem. They may have been cocaine users for the last 20 years, but now they are unfortunately succumbing to the overdose as a result of the cocaine being spiked with fentanyl, and it is taking a different set of individuals age-wise as well as racial-wise than we saw in the past. So if you look at this slide here, this is a slide showing all opiate overdose deaths from 2012 through 2023 that we are aware of, has a separate all fatal overdoses. So those are other overdoses that were unrelated to necessarily an opiate overdose, but were a fatal overdose of a drug. And you could see we were making great progress to the low that we saw a drop of 156 people overdosing and dying of an opiate overdose in 2019. 207 people died of an overdose in 2019, and that may have included other drugs such as cocaine. And that has unfortunately steadily increased as we went through the COVID-19 pandemic. As of the 13th, we had closed 298 cases for 2022, but we still had 20 probable. So we are going to see the largest number of overdose deaths as a result of an opiate overdose probably ever. The highest was 2016 when we had 301. We're now up to 298, but we have 20 probable, and it's likely at least 10 of those will have been individuals who died from an opiate overdose. And what we're also very, very concerned about is what we've seen in the first 2 months and 13 days of this year in which there appears to be 97 cases that are a combined confirmed and probable deaths since January 1st of this year, which is double what we received at the same time for 2022. So we have already seen what potentially could be 1/3 of the total deaths from last year in this year alone, and we've only gone through 2 months and 13 days. So there are many individuals who are overdosing and dying in our community. It's quite apparent. I mean, there's more than one death a day. With 97 deaths going through comparably 75 days or so, we've had more than one death a day since the beginning of 2023. We've confirmed some of those cases. Others are not confirmed, but based on what was found on site, what appeared to occur, it appears that those are probable opiate-related deaths. So not only have we seen a big spike as of 2022, but that spike is even growing to a higher amount this year, and we are all concerned about it. The victim demographics have changed. This goes back to 2015, and I think this is a testament to the incredible work that's been done by our harm reduction team and our partners, as you see a tremendous drop in the number of victims under the age of 30. This is great because we're not seeing people in the prime of their life, at least to the same degree, dying as we did before. But what we have seen is a tremendous increase in the number of people who are dying from an opiate overdose that are over the age of 40. And that is really concerning because what we're seeing is our individuals who are later in their lives. And as a percentage of the overall deaths, remember, we're seeing a growth in the deaths. So just because the percentage, it doesn't appear that much bigger in the age of 50 to 59, there's a lot more 50 to 59-year-olds is a statistical number that died in 2022 than would have died in 15 or 16 or 17 from an opiate overdose. And the information that's been provided to me by the Department of Health is many of these individuals, a high percentage of these individuals, died from cocaine use, cocaine that was spiked with fentanyl. We've heard the stories. We can't tell the names. HIPAA prevents us from telling the names. But there are professionals in our community who died from using cocaine that was spiked with fentanyl. There are truck drivers in our community who died from using cocaine that was spiked with fentanyl. There are all kinds of people from all kinds of walks of life who've died in the last 18 months from cocaine that is spiked with fentanyl. And the cocaine is spiked so much with fentanyl that they've become addicted to fentanyl and they don't even know it. Fentanyl is highly addictive. And they keep on thinking, wow, I need another high, I need another high. Well, it's not the cocaine that they're getting addicted to. They may have been casual cocaine users, used it as a party drug through the years, but now because the fentanyl is inside the cocaine, they've become addicted to fentanyl and they don't even realize it. And that's why it's so difficult to reach these individuals. If someone was a heroin user and they were addicted to heroin, they knew they had a heroin problem. They may have tried to address it. They may have gone through detox and other types of services multiple times. But down in their soul, they knew they had a heroin problem. They had an opiate problem. A lot of these people don't believe they have a problem, but they're addicted to fentanyl. They're addicted to an opiate-based substance because it's been put into the substance that they are primarily using, such as cocaine. So we've seen an age change with regards to the deaths. It's become much older as a percentage of the overall deaths than it was just a few years ago. And once again, I want to thank our partners in the harm reduction industry, so to speak, for the great work that they've done to eliminate the problems associated with that we saw in 15, 16, and 17, and 18, and then you saw the reduction, but now it's totally changed. And because of it, it's very difficult, exceptionally difficult to hit some of these individuals, to get them the Narcan that they need because they don't think they have a problem, but they have a problem, and they need to have Narcan with them. They shouldn't be using these substances alone. One person alone using a substance can't apply Narcan to yourself. And that's the problem we're seeing. I just remember the story that came out of Colorado last year where 5 people in the prime of their lives in the late 20s and 30s died at a party where they just all casually decided they were going to use cocaine and it was spiked with fentanyl and they all died. 2 people survived and they just by sheer luck survived. They had no Narcan there. If they did, maybe all of them would be alive today. Why? Because they didn't realize that what they were doing was taking a fatal drug. The estimates with regards to looking at census, it's changed. It used to be much more predominantly whites that were dying from the overdoses. It's not anymore. The overdose probability, or overdose percentage, I should say, based on the totals that are confirmed and probable for 2022, shows that 28% of the users that died, unfortunately, were black or African American. The percentage of whites has dropped from nearly 80 to 68%. The age range we've talked about, the age range has gone up substantially with regards to those in their 40s and 50s. So what we've seen is really a morphing of the opiate crisis. It has changed. And it's changed in such a manner it makes it very difficult for us to address compared to what we were dealing with before. The locations of the deaths by residents has changed. We're seeing many more people as a percentage of the overall deaths from the city of Buffalo. For the 298 that plus 20 probables for 2022, 55% of them lived in the city of Buffalo. That is an increase of approximately a little more than 10% from 2016. We have seen a drop in the suburban amounts. Rural as a percentage has gone down. The last few years, the total deaths have pretty much stabilized, about the same. But as a percentage from where we were earlier, the percentage has gone down. But we're seeing more individuals in the city of Buffalo who are dying as a result of an overdose from cocaine and potentially crack cocaine that's has fentanyl spiked with it. Once again, the location, this shows the location also is by residence or overdose location. So this is really indicative that of the individuals who are dying, the vast majority of them are dying in their home from using it by themselves at their home, in their home. It's not like somebody who used to drive to buy drugs and they get their heroin hit somewhere else. People are dying in their homes from an opiate overdose, often related to cocaine. And then the density, I want to thank HIDA, the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Agency with the federal government, which is providing us and working with us all along to show us where the deaths are occurring. So this is a density, a heat map, so to speak, and you really see the growth, a high density of growth in the city of Buffalo and the more urban areas of maybe the town of Cheektowaga, town of Tonawanda, but it's really in the more urban areas where we've been seeing deaths and overdose deaths related to opiates. And that's changed, as we showed from the slides before, where it was a higher percentage previously in the suburbs and the rural areas as the overall deaths. Now it's become much more city-centric. And this is another map that just shows the residence and location and race of victims. All of these slides will be available on our website as well as our social media pages. And once again, we want to thank HIDA for the information and working with us as assiduously as they had for a long time now to address what is unfortunately a growing problem and a problem that's different from what we dealt with. And then the suspected overdoses in February. So this is as raw data as you get. Most of these have not been confirmed yet, but these are suspected overdoses. And once again, you can see as a heat map the number of individuals per zip code. It's really city-centric based, or town of Cheektowaga, Tonawanda. So some of those inner ring suburbs that have more urban density to them are the areas where we're seeing this. My hometown of Lackawanna, one of them, that's a higher percentage. So we are, I don't want to say this is an urban issue solely, because it's not. We know there are individuals in the suburbs and the rural areas that are dying, but it has become much more of an urban issue than it was in the past. The demographics, just a page talking about it. We've seen an increase in deaths in black persons from 2018 to 2022, from 10% to 28% of the total deaths. Huge increase. A decrease in white persons from 79 to 68%. A decrease in deaths in persons ages 20 to 29 from 29 to 15%. That's a great thing. The problem is the increase in the deaths for those that are in their 40s to 49. And it hits every age range, but it's growing when it comes as an older percentage. It hits every ethnic denomination. It hits every financial group. As I said, we've seen professionals die in the last year, and it's very, very disheartening because these people should be alive today, but for them using a substance that was spiked with fentanyl. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Burstein to talk now about the substances, because we're also seeing some really scary stuff out there that is in these drugs that is not only killing individuals, but if they survive, can have a serious impact on their quality of life, including potentially amputations. So, Dr. Burstein.
Hi, good morning. As the county executive mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the substances that we're seeing in our opioid-related overdose deaths. So not just opioids, I mentioned cocaine and other substances. And also, I just to frame this, just want to acknowledge the people that are helping to compile these data, people and also do the prevention work that really have kept people alive and are guiding our current work. So our law enforcement partners that are here today. Federal HIDA people, people from the health department, our harm reduction folks that are here, epidemiology, our medical examiner's office, Central Police Services Tox Lab, our Tox Lab in the medical examiner's office. Everybody is working hard to make sure that we understand what's going on and we can drive our prevention interventions because we want to keep people alive. So this is looking at our the percentage of different types of opioids in our opioid-related deaths, starting from 2017 to 2022. So each different color corresponds to a unique year, where 2017 is in blue to the confirmed cases in 2022, which are in orange. So you can so we break it up just for simplicity's sake, looking at fentanyl without heroin, heroin without fentanyl, fentanyl and heroin combined, and all the other opioids. And remember, these are all polysubstances deaths, but here we're just looking at opioids. So you can see very clearly that proportion of people who died from an opioid-related overdose, the proportion of people who had died with fentanyl in their tox screen has skyrocketed. It's gone from only a little over 75% in 2017 to 93% in 2022. So fentanyl is killing people. These are data from our Central Police Services Forensic Lab, and they're doing the analysis of the drugs that are found in crime scenes, including in overdoses. So what you can see here, this is a pie chart looking at the proportion of analyses of drugs found in the crime scenes that have cocaine, fentanyl, other types of opioids. So you can see clearly there's a significant proportion with cocaine, with or without fentanyl, and there's a significant proportion of opioids, including fentanyl and fentanyl analogs. So this is really not just an opioid epidemic, but it's opioid and cocaine, which is driving this. And we know from our data, these are looking, as the county executive alluded to, this is looking at the percentage of Erie County opioid-related deaths that were associated with fentanyl and cocaine in the toxicology screen. So in 2016, when we had our peak in number of opioid-related overdose deaths, cocaine was only found in 16% of our opioid overdose deaths. But now in 2022, so far with the confirmed cases, it's over 50%. 56% of our opioid-related overdose deaths have both fentanyl and cocaine in their toxicology screens. So there's obviously a camp of different population. There's the people that are using straight opioids that we've been traditionally dealing with. However, the county executive pointed out there's a new population of people that are using cocaine that may not even be aware that they are taking any fentanyl or any other substances in their bodies. So there's a new substance that we're finding on the streets. You may have heard of this in the news, xylazine, or the word on the street. It's called tranq, short for tranquilizer. This is a big problem in Philadelphia, and we're starting to see it here in Erie County. So xylazine is basically an animal tranquilizer, and it's used for sedation and pain relief. However, it's being increasingly found in illicit drugs, especially in fentanyl in our community and many communities across the state. The problem is that people are using it more because people say that it has legs. So it lasts longer than other opioids or other substances. It can last 8 hours or longer. The problem is it's very, very toxic. So if people inject it and it gets into their skin, it just eats away at their skin. So it causes these disfiguring skin ulcers. After repeated injections, those get infected, it leads to gangrene, and unfortunately, many people need to have those limbs amputated that are affected. Also it has systemic, very, very toxic effects. So it can lead to coma, cardiac failure, respiratory depression or arrest. And the problem is that there is no antidote for this. Like Narcan doesn't work. This is not an opioid. So the only treatment is supportive care. And what I mean by supportive care, I mean like not only wound care, but people who are in coma and not breathing and their heart's not running, they have to go to the ICU. They have to get intubated. So this is very, very serious. And again, there's no antidote for this. Just some other highlights, what we've seen, new trends in 2022. So again, we've started to see xylazine. So far, it was identified in 13 of our opioid-related deaths. We're starting to see more methamphetamine in our community. About 28 deaths so far, which is about 10% of our opioid-related deaths also have methamphetamine, and that's really doubled compared to a couple years ago. And also, as the county executive mentioned, we're seeing a population that is not just straight opioid users, but they're using cocaine, and that's different than our population of straight opioid users. So these individuals are older, like they're my age, they're in their 50s. Also, we're seeing more racially diverse population, more people that are African American that are using cocaine. As the county executive said, that these individuals, they think they're using cocaine, they think it's a party drug, they've used it forever and haven't had a problem, but unfortunately it's spiked with fentanyl, and people aren't aware, they're not prepared, they don't have Narcan, they're using alone, which is something that we don't recommend for everybody. And also, we're seeing a lot of pills on the streets too. They look exactly like prescription medication. So unless you buy a pill from a licensed pharmacy, be very, very careful. It's probably spiked with fentanyl or xylazine or something else very toxic. So what we're doing in the county, what our response is in the health department, is trying to keep people alive. We really want to prevent all of fatal overdoses. So what we're sending out strong messages to give people the tools to stay alive. We know that one pill can kill. The DEA tells us that all the time. Also, one line of cocaine can kill now too because of the fentanyl. So we have to be very, very careful. So first of all, we want people to seek treatment. If they are they're nodding or they're passing out or their friends packing out, take them to the emergency department. Also, if people want to start with long-term medication-assisted treatment for medication for opioid use disorder, there is support for that. We have our Buffalo and Erie County Addictions Hotline at 716-831-7007. Also, we want people to go to the emergency department. Most of the emergency departments now have New York Matters, and so you go to the emergency department, you say you wanted to work with the New York Matters folks in the emergency department. You'll get your first prescription for buprenorphine, which is usually in Suboxone. You'll get linked up with a long-term treatment provider. You'll get a dose of Narcan, and you get linked up with a peer. So you will start on the journey to recovery. Also, we're telling people never use alone. Even if you think that you're just using cocaine, or you really believe that you're just popping a pill, just popping a benzodiazepine that you bought on the street, it probably has fentanyl in it. If I were a betting man, I would bet it has fentanyl in it. So please never use alone. Always have a friend on hand, and always have Narcan on hand. Also, we're really strongly encouraging people to test their drugs for fentanyl. We have fentanyl test strips. They're available for free. We can give Narcan and fentanyl test strips out. We have a Text for Narcan program, and as well as the test strips. So you can just call the number is 716-225-5473. You can ask for Narcan. You can ask for fentanyl test strips. All we need to know is where you want us to send it. Last year, we sent out 2,400 doses of Narcan to our community. And this year so far, we've sent out 700 Narcan doses. We also are distributing Narcan. Hopefully you will see these on the walls in public buildings. We're also working with our partners in bars and restaurants. We have these Narcan dispensers, so you can just open up the box, take the Narcan that you need. Also when we go out to on the streets with our peers, they're giving out these little Narcan kits. It has Narcan and other fentanyl test strips and other supplies to keep people alive. So we're doing the best we can. We need our community to come together and be aware of the dangers of cocaine and as well as the dangers of our traditional opioids. So I'm going to turn this over to our Sheriff Garcia to fill us in what law enforcement's doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. This is obvious not just a law enforcement issue. It's something that's going on in the community. I'll tell you what we're doing in law enforcement, the Erie County Sheriff's Office. First, as far as the jails go, we are getting people that are coming in our custody that we see more and more that are addicted to heroin, cocaine, and so with our medicine-assisted treatment program, we've gone from 0 to over 100 people that are in the program. It's an optional program, but we're able to dispense methadone and Suboxone in the jail, along with therapy and counseling, and also peers. Save the Michaels are coming in. And we're attacking that so when people get back out into the community, hopefully, they'll stay off both heroin and cocaine. What we're also seeing is that people that are coming into our custody from the community are unhealthy. As the doctor said, you're putting these toxins, these drugs in your system, and it's fentanyl, it's heroin, cocaine, and it's affecting people, and there's a lot of serious health issues that come along with it. So our correctional health unit is having to obviously deal with that. We've seen contraband that has been attempted to be brought in through the mail and so forth, and it goes to show you the strong urge that people need these drugs. So be it inside or outside, they're very desperate to continue using. On the outside, we've been very aggressive targeting the people selling this poison out on the street. We had, in the last couple months, a lot of success in attacking those that are taking their heroin, cocaine, and they're putting fentanyl in there. And now you see tranq. And what is this? This is about greed and that they don't care at all for their customers. So they're making a buck. Why put fentanyl and heroin and cocaine compared to a cutting agent like VitaBlend that was used years ago? What it is the user's getting a more bang for the buck, in that it'll mask that opiate or cocaine feeling with a strong synthetic opiate like fentanyl and this tranquilizer. And this is nothing new, using horse tranquilizer. I remember back in 2005 working with the FBI Safe Streets, and there was an individual on the west side that was selling heroin with ketamine. And there was a surge of people overdosing. And it's all about greed. It's all about greed and not caring about your customer. We continue to go after the people that are selling this, and when we could go back and find out who the dealer is that caused this overdose death, we prosecute, we arrest, and then we work with, or be it the DA's office or the U.S. Attorney's Office. We have a couple cases ongoing now. There's one that originated in Alden, that's at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we had one last week in Grand Island where a gentleman overdosed, and we're pursuing that case. And ironically, the alleged drug dealer also overdosed. So, the reason people are doing this, the fentanyl, and they're putting tranq and everything, is greed, pure greed. They do not care about people. I just I just have to say to people out there that are deciding to use heroin and cocaine, like the doctor said, recreationally, cocaine, and make that decision, it might be your last decision. So we also have to take care of those parents that I get calls from all the time that have no idea how to help their son or daughter through this. And those caretakers also need assistance because they are just at wit's end. We need more treatment centers for both addiction and mental health. And I got to say, we have a great team. I can't say enough about Cheryl Moore and her team and Save the Michaels, all the people up here. We all care about what's going on in the community. The community has to be aware that your drugs are not safe. And I've said this before. It's like going to a bar, ordering a glass of wine or a beer, and people are giving you poison. I think that's murder. I know that there's no state legislation, there's no laws in place to go after these drug dealers, and there's federal legislation, but that's something that we need to address. Again, folks, your drugs are not safe. Be careful. We're working hard to get them off the street, but when it comes to greed, these individuals will find ways to sell it. I just want to introduce our great district attorney, the Honorable John Flynn.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, County Executive and Dr. Burstein. I come at this from a number of different angles. As I've said in the past, obviously during the years of COVID, that health crisis dominated the news. That health problem, we saw those numbers every day on our TV screens and in our papers as far as the number of people who succumbed to COVID. Underneath the surface, during that entire time, there was a silent killer out there. Obviously, it is not silent to the families who suffered from an overdose death because those deaths rang loud and true and dominated their lives as well. But as the county executive pointed out, the numbers showed where we started to see the numbers come down in the few years before COVID. During COVID, they skyrocketed back up, and they continue to go back up. And from our standpoint here in Buffalo, and it's also across the country and across the state, but obviously there's an added component now and a new component here in Buffalo. As the county executive alluded to, the new component from a drug standpoint over the past few years has been cocaine. Cocaine has added a whole new element to this problem. It is affecting a whole new demographic and a whole new area of our community that we have not seen in the past. There's also another problem here in Buffalo, and that's Canada. We are seeing more and more drugs now, fentanyl analogs, being intercepted at the border and coming across the Canadian border. The narrative out there is that everything is coming from Mexico. Build a wall down south. Stop the drugs come from Mexico. Now, obviously, that's true. The drugs are coming from Mexico. But we are seeing more and more over the past year or so, more and more drugs coming in through Canada. And when that happens, that's going to affect Buffalo. That's going to affect New York State more now. And so our partners in law enforcement from a federal, state, and local level are aware of this. And obviously we have, Canada on our radar as far as intercepting these drugs and finding out who these drug dealers are and putting a stop to this. And we're doing our best. I want to give you some other numbers that are equally disturbing. And again, I don't want to get into too off tangent here on a discussion about what the potential causes are. I'm more than happy to do that offline, but I got some theories. As we all know, in 2017, we started the first ever opioid court here in Buffalo, New York. The first ever in the country, where we treated the opioid crisis as a health problem within our court system, where in the past we viewed drug arrests purely in a criminal context. But we changed. And when I became DA in 2017, like I said, we started the first ever opioid court here in Buffalo, New York. And that year, we had 157 referrals in that court. In 2018, we had 226 referrals. In 2019, we had 175 referrals. In 2022, we had 49. 49. Where we had 175. Now, we can say two things. We can say that those were pre-COVID numbers, or we can say they were pre-criminal justice reform numbers. And again, I don't want to get political here, but we all have our different opinions on this. We all have, different data we can pull out and different excuses we can talk about. But I'm telling you right now that part of helping people, part of getting people into treatment and saving their lives sometimes requires tough love. And tough love in a criminal justice context, in my world, sometimes means having a criminal offense hanging over their head. Consequences, accountability to some degree. Everyone knows I have no interest in putting an individual who is addicted to opioids, cocaine, any other drug, that addicted individual in jail. I want to help that person. I want to save that person's life. I want to put the trafficker in jail. I want to put the drug dealer in jail, but I do not want to put the user in jail. I never have in the past 6 years of my time as DA, and I never will. But sometimes you got to have a little tough love. And sometimes you need to have a criminal charge or the threat of incarceration hanging over someone's head. And after bail reform and equally discovery as well, after those two laws were passed in 2020, you see the numbers. And again, we can say it's COVID. That's fine. COVID's been over for a little while now, okay? It's still out there, obviously. It's still out there, obviously, but you know what I mean, okay? And so we can, we need to have a serious discussion about saving people's lives and about helping people. And this is something that needs to be addressed. The last thing I want to talk about is that, in my capacity as a National District Attorney Association president, in November of last year, I, along with a number of different organizations, from the International Association of Police Chiefs to the National Sheriff's Association, sent a letter to Senator Durbin and Senator Grassley, who were the ranking and minority member leaders of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, and we asked them to permanently schedule the fentanyl analog schedules through the DEA. As a lot of us know, the permanent schedules in the federal government when it comes to fentanyl and fentanyl analogs has been just kicked down the can every 2 years. It keeps getting extended. But we need a permanent solution to this problem because, as Dr. B pointed out, the fentanyl analogs can be changed on a daily basis. And people can tweak with the analogs and tweak with what they're putting in the powder or the liquid. And when you make those tweaks, they may not be under a listed substance under the DEA regulations in order to criminally prosecute an individual for having those substances. So when you just keep kicking the can down the road every 2 years and you don't come up with a permanent solution to have a general rule that says fentanyl and all fentanyl analogs and have a blanket statute that reads that way, you're going to have drug dealers and drug traffickers who are going to continue to tweak with the substances in order to make the substance a legal substance where you can't arrest or prosecute for it. So, on December 31st, 2022, Congress just temporarily extended again for 2 more years. I will continue to fight in Congress to as long as I'm the president of the National DA Association, to get a permanent solution to this problem. So, there are multiple areas that we can fight this problem from a criminal justice standpoint. And again, I want to thank my partners in law enforcement from the federal level to the state level to our great sheriff for all they've done. I want to thank the county executive and the county legislature for, this problem would be much worse here in terms of being able to hold people accountable, the dealers, and getting the people who are in our drug courts, albeit lesser numbers now, to getting them the help that they need if I wasn't provided the resources that I were by the county executive and the county legislature. And I've been given those resources. Unfortunately, a lot of my colleagues across the state, their county governments are not, don't work as well with their DAs across the state, and they have not gotten the resources that I have over the past 3 or 4 years. And so I thank the county executive. I thank all those in the health community who are working with me to save people's lives. Because at the end of the day, that's what I want to do. I want to save people's lives. I want to save the user, and I want to save the society out there and the population out there by putting the drug dealers in jail so they aren't peddling this poison. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. District Attorney. Thank you, Sheriff. This is a team effort. As everyone noted, we want to save lives. We don't want to see these numbers continue to increase. We are here to warn the public. As the Sheriff noted, there is no such thing as a safe drug. There's no such thing as a fun party drug. You can take that safe party drug you think about and die, and the next party that your family's having is their wake for you, because they have to come together to bury you. And that, unfortunately, is happening way too often in our community. So to all, I want to thank once again District Attorney Flynn, Sheriff Garcia, their teams for the incredible work that they've done, Dr. Burstein and the teams from the Department of Health, and there's multiple teams that are out there trying to save lives. This is not a joke. It's like the meme that was put out there during COVID. This is not funny. There are people in our community who should be alive today, but they're not because they died from an overdose of a substance, whether it was a pill they bought on the street that they thought was a benzo, as Dr. B noted, but actually may have been pure fentanyl. Or it was cocaine that they've occasionally used throughout their whole life that they go and they get from a dealer, and the next thing you know, they use it alone and they're dead until no one knows about it, until their family has to break into the house to see what happened to their loved one. It happens. It's happening in our community, and as we note, there are more, on average, at least one person a day dying in 2023 from what we appear to be either confirmed or suspected opiate overdoses, and we have to lower that number. We have to save lives. So I want to thank all my partners for being here today, and we'll be glad to take any on-topic questions.
Have you been able to find any reason for the rise in the age of those overdoses? I think most people think about people overdosing as people in their 20s or 30s, but that's clearly not the case. Is there any explanation that you've been able to gather for that rise in the age?
What I've been informed from the Department of Health is that primarily that increase in cocaine users that have spiked fentanyl. And Cheryl Moore in the back is shaking or nodding her head yes. So individuals who may never have touched an opiate-based drug in their life, whether it's heroin or an OxyContin pill, but have used cocaine on and off throughout their lives, it's now spiked. It's not pure cocaine anymore. It's cocaine with fentanyl, and fentanyl, as we know, just a tiny amount of it can kill. So we believe that individuals who've used cocaine throughout their entire life, either the regular cocaine, crack cocaine, are now taking cocaine, crack cocaine, that is spiked with fentanyl. And as a result, it's causing deaths in age groups we really didn't see to the same extent as before. Any other on-topic questions?
Is there another step? I guess are we doing everything we can? I guess is there another avenue to explore?
Well, we are exploring every avenue possible, working with our partners. We have additional funds that are coming in as a result of the opiate settlement, which will be used with our partners in the not-for-profit industry that will be assisting our law enforcement. We're not going to leave any stone unturned. The problem is the information to the public now is really that important with regards to what's in the substances that people are using. So when we talked about the opiate epidemic 5 years ago, it was a different problem, totally different problem. And we, I don't want to say we solved it, because there's still individuals who are dying from heroin or dying from a pill-based addiction that they morphed to heroin that's pretty much fentanyl. But we did a great job in reducing that problem in our community. It's just changed. It's totally changed. And that's why it's so important to get this information out to the public, and we're going to continue to do that. And we're going to try everything possible. We're working with new groups that we didn't necessarily work with in the past, so that we can reach out to a different set of individuals that may not think they have a problem but do, so that they understand that next high they get from cocaine could be the last breath they take.
Oh, can I give an
Yes.
example, please? Thanks. So as county executive mentioned appropriately, that we are really trying to target this different population, this population that has been traditionally using cocaine and now it's spiked with fentanyl. So we have to go to different places and give different messages. So for example, we're out there much more in the bars, the restaurants, the clubs, places where music is played, like where you see where you have concerts. Our peers will go out there, our outreach workers, Cheryl goes out, and they'll have the Narcan to give people, they'll fentanyl test strips, and people will actually test what they think is cocaine right there in front of us, and be shocked that there's fentanyl in it. So I mean, we're seeing this happen, and when we go out, so we are really trying hard to go to these new places where this new population that is traditional cocaine users go, out in clubs, restaurants, bars, venues where they play music, and really trying to interact with those individuals. And it's really reality testing. We have to show them with fentanyl test strips that their cocaine does have fentanyl in it. And unfortunately, that's the only way we can really get to them, because they've had years of experience of using cocaine without any problem, and now all of a sudden, there's a problem, and everybody always thinks, oh, that happens to other people, it doesn't happen to me, but it will happen to you because it's so prevalent. Thanks.
How are you doing on prosecuting people who are the dealers when people overdose and die?
Well, as the sheriff alluded to, the New York state laws are not great for homicide-related charges when it comes to dealers. There's a number of cases out there that are not favorable to us in order to be able to prove that homicide-related offense. I've had a couple of them over the course of the past 5 or 6 years, but the majority of them I turn over to the feds, because the federal government has much better statutes when it comes to being able to prosecute a dealer for a homicide-related offense. So I mainly collaborate with my federal partners on referring those cases to them. Like I said, I had a couple of cases that I got a manslaughter conviction on over the course of the past 6 years, but the overwhelming majority of them I forward to the feds.
Do you sense, and this is kind of a loaded question, because let's face it, drug smuggling has been going on for
Yeah.
years, but I know sheriffs don't know, do you sense that the federal government could do, and you mentioned the northern border too, so it's not just the southern border. Have you tried, though, to go to federal agencies and said, is there anything more you can do to stem this flow of fentanyl across our borders? Is there anything more you can do?
Sure, there is. I mean, obviously, we can. Intelligence obviously is one area. The more intelligence that we have amongst our law enforcement partners to find out and intercept the drugs coming in is incredibly helpful. So again, more resources that you can pump into intelligence and into law enforcement agencies to try to stem the tide. Obviously, it's a much bigger geopolitical question, okay, as far as relationships with Mexico and having the Mexican government help us out in stemming the drug cartels in Mexico. So I mean, those are discussions way above my pay grade, obviously. But yeah, I mean, obviously more law enforcement and more intelligence to be able to find out where it's coming in and intercept it would be tremendously helpful.
I just throw that
Yeah,
out
yeah.
because you heard the comment of the president of Mexico. Fentanyl is your problem. It's
Yeah,
not
well, I would disagree with that, but.
Can I just make a comment on that? Ron, it's like everything else. It's supply and demand. The Mexican government, I'm sure, is thinking if your public was not addicted to, be it heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl, then there wouldn't be this issue, with the border and bringing over those poisons, right? So we have to take care of what we have to take care in this nation, which is we have to educate our public that these drugs are poison and they will kill you. Now, it's a very capitalistic society, so dealers are very resourceful and they'll bring it in any which way possible to make a buck. And as we see, they're extending their product and their profit margin on heroin and cocaine by stretching that out by putting fentanyl that has a bigger bang than, let's say, a cutting agent like a laxative, baking powder, Vitablend, and so forth, that doesn't have the effect that fentanyl and tranq and ketamine have. But they don't care about their customers. They don't care about return customers because there's so many out there. And the public has to be aware that these drugs are not safe, and we have to educate people. Now, we aggressively go after drug dealers that put this cutting agent in their drugs. And, you heard from the DA. I mean, he aggressively prosecutes, as does U.S. Attorney's Office, but there's so many. There's so many. Why? Because there's so many customers. So that is the issue.
Okay. Any other questions?